the people that choose to work with us for those reasons. It's really not about the commission percentage. It's really not about where do we park? Do we get a free hair color service every couple of weeks or months or whatever? Like, it is 100% the energy and the vision and the communication from the leader.
Hello and welcome to the Elevate podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Nowakowski. I'm a salon owner, educator, and mindset coach that helps hairstylists and salon owners go from overwhelmed and burnt out to motivated and empowered. It is my mission to help you systemize your business, generate more profit, and create a career behind the chair that you love. Join us every week to learn about small shifts you can make to elevate your business regarding mindset, marketing, social media, business systems, and so much more. Welcome to the Elevate podcast. On today's podcast, I am so excited to talk to Kate Kent. Kate Kent has been a huge influence in my life and in my career. And she is somebody who is so impactful in our industry. And today, her and I are going to chat a little bit about emotional intelligence, because that is her jam, and how it has changed her career and how you can start implementing some emotionally intelligent things inside of your business. Kate, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I want you to take a moment just to introduce yourself, give a little bit of information about who you are, what you do, and all of the beautiful things that you've created.
Hello, my name is Kate Kent. I guess, I don't know. I'm a human being on this planet. Currently in my life, I own a salon. And I am also a coach with Destroy the Hairdresser, and I work with a lot of salon owners and leaders, and leadership specifically. I also am a parent to two pretty cool teenage Gen Z radical people. I am an artist as well. And so I'm tapping back into, those creative juices that have gone dormant since art school, and kind of bringing those things back to life. That's a little bit about me. What else do you want to know?
I love that. I know I love all of the artwork you're doing in your salon. It's so inspiring.
So I went to art school and got an art degree, and then, didn't do as much with that as I think I really wanted to in my life. And then got pregnant and went to beauty school, and life took a different turn. And I always felt like art and making art was this really special, coveted process. And when I went into doing hair and in the hair world, it felt creative, but it didn't feel as special and coveted. It felt, kind of superficial and a little bit unnecessary. And so well over 10 years into my career, I struggled back and forth about what does all of this even mean? And is this art? And why am I doing this? And so, to get a little long-winded about it, I feel currently like my salon is kind of it's like an art studio again.
I love that.
It's a new version of kind of combining these things back together in a way that makes sense for me and for my business. And, I don't think it's for everyone, but that's a lot of what we talk to and teach to. I'm sure for all your listeners out there, they're like, what works for one doesn't work for all. And that's a beautiful thing.
And that's so beautiful. So your specialty is emotional intelligence. You have taught me so much, and you've had a huge impact in my personal life and in my business life. And I wanted you to share your story and share some of your knowledge today, because I feel like this is one of the major missing pieces inside of our industry. Kate, what is your definition of emotional intelligence?
Oh boy. Emotional intelligence. I feel like I'm going to do it verbatim, like we teach it, because it's sort of become my definition. But emotional intelligence is our ability to understand our own emotions and the emotions of another person, and to communicate about those emotions without bringing the emotions to the conversation.
So what did it look like before you actually started incorporating or really kind of diving into emotional intelligence being in our industry?
A lot of crying, I think. A lot of extreme emotions, like, and not knowing what to do with those things. So prior to having a name for this and learning more about it, like I really did put myself into the category as like hyper emotional, like a very emotional woman, an emotional artist. And, you know, as an artist, those things were good. Like you could channel that into like some kind of like introspective piece of art. But then working with human beings in a salon, and you're like, wow, like everyone is really super emotional. So learning more about this and how everyone is emotional, right? We just don't necessarily communicate those emotions and behave in such a way that we really want to. So like that was kind of like the really critical piece for me. Like I've always been very sensitive and emotional and, you know, empathetic. Like I really can kind of see in another human being like what they're feeling, even if they don't share it with me. And it's a blessing and a curse sometimes, right? To like have a little tap into people's feelings. So, you know, to learn how to really understand those emotions personally and how to not be responsible for somebody else's emotions, you know, especially moving into a position of leadership, then you're like, oh, thank God I'm not responsible for this person's frustration. But I can see that they are frustrated. And now we can have a conversation about it.
I love that. So what prompted you to start your journey to really dive deep into emotional intelligence?
I don't know. I think like it just always has been there. Um, it's interesting. I was thinking about this kind of in our preparation for this talk today, but like I was really reflecting on, you know, some of the artwork that I was making when I was in art school, and kind of it all was connected to like body versus brain, right? Thoughts versus emotions. Like, how do our feelings, like in our gut, like our gut reaction to things, how does that affect how we think about things? And how do our thoughts and that logic, how does that affect like our emotional state? So, this has kind of been just, I think, a theme that I was born with. I think I've been born with a tapped in sense to emotions. And so I can't say that I went seeking it out. It just is something that is always there, and it makes sense to me in a way that other things don't. So I don't mean to say that it comes naturally to me, but it comes a little bit more naturally to me. And I also can recognize that I'm needing to constantly work on it and pay attention to, you know, refining it in a way that is palatable to other people too.
What are some of the things that you really did to kind of develop this amazing, call it a skill, but this amazing gift that you have?
Asking questions, like listening, and really being curious. I think, you know, discovering like what a certain emotion feels like to me, right? Like if we just pick one, for example, let's say, you know, jubilant, right? Like jubilant. I wanted to pick a fun one. Feeling jubilant, like when I think about that, like, and really tap into like, what does that feel like in my body? What does that feel like? What does that feel like for me? You know? Like that curiosity of like, it's different than feeling inspired. It's different than feeling gratitude. It's different than feeling anger, obviously. But also like jubilant for you probably feels different, or like different things inspire that feeling in you. And like that has always been super fascinating to me. And I think becoming curious about what those things feel like for other people and opening up that conversation of asking questions, like that's been a huge part of this. And I think really like not assuming, I would never assume that jubilant means the same thing to you as it does to me.
I think self-awareness is something that's so important. It's an important part of emotional intelligence. Where do you find, like, what are some tangible things that you can give to the people listening to kind of start building on self-awareness besides just like asking questions and listening?
Oh, yeah. Well, the asking questions is important, I think, when you're having conversations with other people. And it also is important in asking yourself. So, I think becoming a really curious observer of yourself, to kind of look at yourself and your life and your thoughts and your feelings and what you do day to day, like those routines, from like a really bird's eye view, as sort of like an unbiased observer, to be like, that's interesting. I get upset whenever there's a long line at the coffee shop, right? Like, it's not that we're saying this is good or bad. We just now are aware that like we get irritated when there's a long line. So like starting to develop this observation of self then puts us back in the driver's seat of being able to choose, like, well, maybe I go 30 minutes earlier and maybe there's a shorter line, right? And then we start experimenting. Well, maybe I get my favorite coffee and I make it at home, right? What does that look like? Then we can start to like change things instead of just becoming like this victim to, well, I don't like this. I don't like the way this feels. I'm annoyed.
Yes, I love that, because I think that's, something that happens a lot is people are a victim to the things that happen to them instead of just creating a solution and really looking at different scenarios and seeing how they can change it to make it different to impact their lives.
Being the person who decides to do something different, right now you're choosing. If I can become aware that this thing irritates me, like I have the power to change that. I also have the power to complain about it and like feel bad about it and continue to sit in that victimhood. But I could also just alter one thing slightly and then have it be a completely different outcome, or try 25 different things to see what really works. So I like there's also like kind of a bravery that you need to have when you kind of go on this journey of self-discovery, because it's not going to be all sunshine and roses. Like there's an element of like having a lot of support, like taking care of your physical body and your mental health and making sure that you understand your finances and like all of these factors of life, because one of those things in a really terrible place can throw off the whole homeostasis of your whole self, right?
Yes. How long have you owned your salon for?
Ooh, let's see. 4.5 years.
And you opened your salon with a coach.
I did.
Which is so amazing. I wish I would have done that. That would have changed everything, but everything for a reason, because I am the coach I am today because of all of the things that I went through. What did your salon look like when you first opened compared to now? Because I feel like, as coaches, we experience so much growth because we're always continually working on ourselves and growing and learning through our students. So what would you say the beginning of your salon looked like compared to the growth in between until now?
Wow. Okay. Good question. The beginning of Nice Hair, my salon's called Nice Hair. The beginning of Nice Hair was actually really wonderful. And we started with a full team. It's like I ended up getting a larger space than I originally was gonna do, which is something that happens in this process. And I ended up having a full team of like 9 or 10 people that started when the salon opened day one, which was a complete shock to me to find out that that is really not normal. I was like, I don't know any different. So that was really wonderful. So we started off with a really wonderful team. Through the course of experimenting and changing things, like I learned that not everyone wanted the same vision that I had. And so the team that I started with is not at all the team that I have now. Like I have a complete changeover of teams. So I have all new people, especially since, the pandemic and all of the craziness that caused and created. But I think when we opened, I had this idea of what a salon should look like and feel like, and what a leader and a salon owner did and didn't do. And now I have a completely different perspective of what a salon owner does and does not do, and also what a salon means and looks like to me. Right? Like in the beginning, I was like, but this is what it's supposed to be because this is what I know. And now I don't care. Now I really don't care what any other salon looks like because I have my own vision that I'm kind of working to create. It's not a competitive thing versus like trying to change it to be better than anyone else's. It just like, I feel like it's much more true to what I really wanted to create now versus when it first opened.
I love all of that, especially because I think as, creatives, when we think about opening our salon, and this is such a common theme, we want to do it because we want to do things differently. And what ends up happening is we just end up doing it like everyone else does it because that's what we know, or it's, what we expect it to be. And when in reality, like you should just create your own space and what you love, because that's what's going to make your salon authentic and unique. And I think it's hard for a lot of people to do that because they're in the wrong mindset of being competitive, when in reality, there's no competition, really. There's enough clients and enough people to go around and enough stylists.
It's true.
And that's what's going to draw people to you, that you really truly want to work for you, is when you find your authentic self, because it's different. And I like that.
Yeah. The interesting thing, and I'm sure that you have experienced this too, is like what you are feeling and going through emotionally and in your life, you now see reflected in everyone around you, right? You see, if you're struggling with social media, you now see that reflected in your team, and you see it reflected in your students, and you see it reflected in conversations. And if you're struggling financially, like you now see that reflected in all of these other places. So being the leader, while we do have, a responsibility to do all the due diligence and like the checklist of things that we've said we're going to do, like, not to get crazy weird, but like energetically, it's a lot of responsibility to make sure that we're doing this self-awareness work and the emotional intelligence work to better ourselves, because that energy now translates to the team. And like, that's, I think, the most important thing for me now. And one of the biggest ahas that I've realized in the last couple of years owning a salon is like everything that I am experiencing, everyone around me also experiences through me in different ways. And like being able to tap into that understanding in an emotionally intelligent way, and to not have that responsibility crush you because it can feel a little bit crushing sometimes to say, well, I'm responsible for everyone else's money. Like, that's not true. But my mindset and my feelings about how all of this works is really important. Because if I'm irritated or annoyed by it or frustrated by it, and I'm not fully honest and communicating that in a responsible way, like that energy does translate to the other people. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. Perception is projection. And everything is a reflection. Yeah.
Yeah. And like the people that choose to work with us for those reasons. It's really not about the commission percentage. It's really not about where do we park? Do we get a free hair color service every couple of weeks or months or whatever? Like, it is 100% the energy and the vision and the communication from the leader.
Yes, 100%. And hands down, I literally asked everyone in my salon, like, why do you work here? And it had nothing to do with any of those things. It was the people, the energy, the culture.
Yeah.
The leader.
Yeah. My team, like recently, they've all been just like cracking open in this like really beautiful, creative way, which I'm like, that's interesting because I just painted a mural on the wall like a couple of weeks ago. And like that energy is now translating, and there's this creative artistic energy. Like they now know that they have the freedom to do that. So they feel like they can fully be themselves and create, because I feel like I can fully be myself and create. And I'm not like, also know that like, I'm not taking credit for that. Right. It's a weird balance of like, I'm not taking credit for their creativity whatsoever, but that's the natural, like energetic vibe that is just, it's contagious.
Yeah, you attract what you put out. The energy that you vibrate is what you bring to you. What advice would you give to somebody who maybe is struggling with like a lower vibration of energy, or just like struggling with their mindset right now because they're feeling frustrated with their business? How would you like guide them to maybe start to shift that so they can start seeing a difference in their business?
Dang, they need help. They need help. Like we can think our way to where we want to go, right? And we can talk ourselves into it, but like sometimes there are things that we don't know that we need to know, and we have to hear them from somebody else. So I will always direct somebody to hire a coach, because that for me was the only way that I was fully able to break through my own garbage, was because somebody called me out on my shit. Like if some salon owner, I know all of you are out there, if you're struggling and you keep doing the same thing over and over, changing things and changing everything over and over, like there's something else that maybe you're not seeing. Or maybe you know exactly what it is, but you're afraid to do it. Like a lot of times we're just afraid to let go. We're afraid to be weird. So I think like, I just know that for me personally, like having the support is like the only way that I've been able to like grow financially and grow my confidence as, a leader in an industry that is like really volatile.
It really is.
Like everybody's mad or sad or everything is toxic and whatever. It's a wild, wild west out there.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I agree with the coach thing too. I didn't really start having impact on my business or seeing results in my business until I started working with the David.
Yeah. And I would say like, I'm not here to like 100% like promote coaching for everyone. You could practice self-awareness and mindfulness in lots of different ways, right? So you could start taking courses and classes on a spiritual level. You could start, going to like a Zen mastermind, whatever it is. You could read books. But what I have found is that we fill our brains with so much stuff, and we can journal and we can feel and we can observe that all day long to our heart's content. The only way to make any changes is to do something different. So it's taking the information from your thoughts, it's taking the information about your feelings, and also like holding them gently and also throwing them out the window at the same time and doing the thing that you want to do. And that is fucking terrifying.
It is. And that's why having a coach helps, because it's the support and the confidence that is just brought with somebody who's all in it with you. Like your coach is all in it with you, and I don't think that like anyone in my business, like our stylists aren't always all in it with us. Right. So I don't know, having that support is, it's priceless.
Yeah. I think just an unbiased, unconditional support.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a little bit. The bias comes like we want them to be successful. Like that's the bias, is like, I'm all in if the student is all in.
And I think too, like you said, having someone call you out on your shit, because as a salon owner, there really is no one pointing things out to us in a way that is impactful for our business.
Yeah. And if our team is really pointing things out to us and we're blaming them, we're gonna lose those team members at some point. Everybody needs to really just like let go. Like let go to any outcome happening, right? We're trying to control everything all the time and it's so exhausting. So just like let go and enjoy the ride, which again, how do you do it? Right. Then the people are like, how do you do that? And you're like, well, I'm not fully sure how you do it. Like you've got to figure out how you do that for your own self. And it's a challenge every day to like choose to let go and like let Jesus take the wheel.
Jesus, take my wheel.
Jesus, take the wheel, except that you're actually Jesus. You're taking your own wheel. Yes. And that's also liberating.
Very. What is one last piece of advice you would give to everyone listening?
Okay, last piece of advice. Okay, which one do I want to choose? I have so many pieces of advice. I think become a radical observer of yourself, for a period of time. Like take the next week, take 2 weeks. Don't do a lot of obligations and really just like pay attention to what you think, what you feel, when you feel these things and think these things, right? Like who brings up these thoughts and feelings and what situations. And like after you go through that process, you really have kind of a nice layout of like, oh, there's a lot of information that I can look at here and I can see exactly what I can start with. And I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but like I know that this is the first thing I'm going to work on because it's clearly here. So that's some of my best advice is self-awareness.
Mm-hmm. Love that. And how can people sign up for coaching? Are you taking new students right now?
Hell yeah.
All right. How can people sign up coaching with you?
So you can follow me on Instagram. My handle is at Kate Kent Nice Hair. And my coaching bio is linked in my profile. It's also linked, obviously, on the Destroy the Hairdresser coach page. And there are one-on-one subscription options. And we also have one-time calls, like on-demand 45-minute calls that you can book in whenever you want to. You don't have to be a student for life. You can just have a one-time call. And that's the place. Those are the places.
I love it. Thank you so much for doing this podcast with me today. And I can't wait to see you in real life soon, hopefully.
Yes. Let's get some chips and salsa.
Yes. I'm going to drive down and come visit you.
I would love that. Thank you for inviting me. I am always down to talk about the feels.
I know. I just feel like it's so needed. So thank you so much for doing this.